As 2012 draws to a close, we are looking back at the top Canadian news stories of the year. 2012 began with a guilty verdict in the killings of the 3 young Shafia sisters in Kingston, Ontario. As Christina Stevens tells us, the year will also be remembered for weeks of street protests in Montreal and an international manhunt for a Canadian accused of murdering a Chinese student.
Guilty, guilty, and guilty. After a lengthy and gripping trial, Mohammed Shafia, his second wife, and son were convicted of murdering their 3 daughters and his first wife in so-called honor killings that horrified the country.
One death is tragic enough, but when 4 family members lose their lives, it's the tragedy beyond measures.
The bodies of the victims were found in the family's Nissan, submerged in a canal in June 2009. Outraged students took to the streets of Montreal repeatedly from the winter into spring in a relentless series of protests over planned tuition hikes. Some of the rallies turned violent, and in May the government passed Bill 78, an emergency law that attempted to manage how protesters conducted their demonstrations. The result? What some have called the largest act of civil disobedience in Canada, as tens of thousands of people marched in downtown Montreal. The protests helped topple Quebec's Liberal government, paving the way for separatist Parti Québécois to return to power. Also in May, relief at a guilty verdict in the Tori Stafford trial. Her father jubilant.
It was all for this little girl right here.
Michael Rafferty was convicted of abducting, sexually assaulting, and murdering 8-year-old Tori. His accomplice, Terry Lynn McClintock, had originally told police Rafferty used a hammer to kill Tori, but during the trial changed her story to say that she was in fact the killer. May 29th, a foot was delivered in the mail to Conservative Party headquarters, beginning a grim investigation and international manhunt for Luca Magnotta. The victim, Lynn June's severed body parts were sent to political parties and elementary schools. Details were shocking.
As gross and as graphic it could be, yes.
Charged with murder, Magnotta was arrested in an internet cafe in Berlin while reading news stories about himself. A desperate race against time in Elliott Lake after part of the rooftop parking lot collapsed in the Argo Mall. There were signs of life from one of 2 women trapped under the rubble. Still, the search was called off over safety concerns, tearing family members apart.
I know she's still alive. I'm not giving up. You know, that person is going to be strong, and it's going to be Lucy.
The search resumed, but neither victim survived. The town was outraged as they said signs the structure wasn't safe had been ignored.
Some gunshots.
June 2nd, chaos reigned as gunfire rang out inside Toronto's Eaton Centre Mall food court. 2 men died, a half-dozen people were injured. 6 weeks later, another mass shooting in Toronto. A scene of sheer panic.
My daughter called me and she said she was dodging bullets.
As rapid-fire gunshots cut through a community barbecue on Danzig Street, killing 2 innocent people, wounding 23 others. 4 teenagers face a slew of charges. And those are some of the top stories in Canada in 2012. Christina Stevens, Global News, Toronto.